Going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 123 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. This is the Creator Series. Today I interviewed an artist and producer out of Rockville, Maryland. His name is David Solorio. He actually just goes by Solorio. He actually reached out to me in June when I was looking for a new guest to be on the podcast, and he said, he'd be honored to be on the show. And I was honored to have him this week because we had a real great conversation. He talked about his beginnings, specifically in production, around his senior year of high school. He actually talked about how the IT guy in the school gave him access to Studio One and really just kind of taught him the ropes of, how to do music production. And he really hasn't stopped ever since. That led to him kind of dabbling into Pro Tools as well and learning some things. I loved his takes on, starting out as a producer, kind of just waiting for local rappers and other people to hop on his beats. But that kind of led him to take the decision to become an artist, songwrite, do the singing and all the vocals. And ever since then, he's been releasing his own music as well. We discussed his latest single called Float and how that's going to lead into his new EP that he's currently working on, which should be out before the end of the year. He's also doing a lyric video for Float that should be out very soon. Overall, I love David's real genuine take on life and music in general, and really just keeping the passion and the love that he has for music in everything he does, and just really, staying true to himself at the end of the day. And that's all we really can do as creatives. And you never want to lose that fun that you had when you began making music, because, we get into routines as people, but if it becomes too much of a job, then it's kind of like we might as well go do something else at that point. So I loved his takes on that. There's a lot more great takes in this episode. So I thank David for his time, and I hope you guys enjoy this one. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome everyone to episode 123 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. This is the Creator Series. Today I have a guest out of Maryland, actually. Producer, DJ, artist, songwriter. Guy does a lot of great stuff. Really like what he's doing. And he reached out to me this week about being on the show. Solorio is here. How are you, man?
Hey man, I'm good. Just glad to be here. Glad to talk.
Yeah, man, and like I said, thank you so much for reaching out and even being a supporter of the show and wanting to get on here to tell a little bit more about yourself. And to start off every episode, we have the guests kind of give a bit of background. How did you get into music? How long have you been doing it? Kind of just basic information for those that might not know you and what you do.
Yeah. So, how did I start? When did I start? Why did I start? I've been playing music probably my whole life, ever since I was in elementary school. I played trumpet for many years, and I really liked jazz band, so I was always in jazz band in school. But then, at some point, I was so used to always going to competitions and playing the songs that have basically been played hundreds of times or thousands of times, and I started thinking to myself, what can I actually do? I have this whole education in music, and yet when it comes to actually writing music, even if I wanted to write it on trumpet or I wanted to write it on a piano, I couldn't. So I think the early kind of germination of it was just what is my music education really like? What is it if I can't make it? So then that kind of subsided, and I got into a bunch of different types of music, and then I ran into, funny enough, the IT guy at my high school, and he was the one who ran this little studio that we had inside the chorus room. And instantly I was like, yo, you gotta teach me how to make music. So he showed me, Pro Tools, and he showed me Studio One. His name is Colin Fotia, by the way. And he kind of put me on to how people nowadays make music. They don't just write it down on a piece of paper like I was always taught. They use these softwares to make everything happen. And from there was just kind of like this burrowing, constant growth and kind of tunneling into what it is that I like to do, which was make songs, make ideas, beats, if you will. I try to stay away from that word, but it's kind of hard to at this point. And so that was always combined with kind of this idea that I'm not like the other musicians that were around me. I was always kind of like this free person, never kind of like bound to these ideas that came along with music education. Like you have to know these scales and you have to know these tunes and this and that. I just wanted to do something that was cool. So those two forces kind of pushed me into that direction of just, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do, and then, we'll see what happens. So I didn't end up going to like a college for music, specifically like a conservatory, anything like that. I just always prioritized my ability to create my own sound and create my own music. Over the years, and that happened around 2017, but over the years, I've just been picking up skills due to either necessity or just kind of like lack of community, to be honest. But I'll get into that later. But yeah, so since 2017, I've been making music. Yeah.
So you're on like a 5-year journey then at this point. So that's crazy.
I mean, plus or minus the pandemic, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, because you can add another. That's like 10. That feels like 10 years now at this point.
Right.
Even though it's been a couple. But I got to go back to the IT guy, because that's a pretty funny story in itself. Because it's like, usually I feel like, at least where I went to school, there weren't people that were that cool. Like at my school, like if an IT guy, like the computer guy, was like, "Hey, I'll teach you how to like produce," I'd be like, "What? This is great." Be like, so like that's honestly like funny that he was like that cool to be like, "I'll kind of show you like how to do like some basic stuff and like get you kind of going." So
yeah, it was a crazy interaction.
Yeah.
Because I set it up in my senior year, having my last semester of my senior year, where I really got into it. And I set my schedule up so that I had to come in for like the first 4 periods or like the last 4 periods, depending on what quarter I was in. So half the day, literally, I would just be doing whatever. Because I was a senior, I had all my courses, everything. So literally, I would take my stuff, go to his office, rent out a little laptop that the school uses for like computer science or whatever, and then it would have like Studio One on it, and then I would go into my car in the parking lot of the school, and I would just hook it up to my car's aux and just make music that way. And we had that little studio, so once we got in that studio, like it was crazy. We used to like hide underneath like the windows so that we would wait like 45 minutes for the next class to end, and then we would get out and like do more music, because the rest of the afternoon it was like it was free. So just lots of funny stories of just trying to make that work, and that really inspired me that whole period of time.
Yeah, that's awesome though, because like usually you don't see people that are willing to kind of do that, especially in like that type of setting, because most people don't even know what a music career looks like, or they don't know what producing is. They don't really get it. You know what I mean? So I think it was cool that you had somebody that kind of like at least like got you kind of going in that way and let you do that. You know what I mean? And gave you permission to do that and stuff. And so that's super awesome to hear. And are you still on Studio One then? Did that kind of like just keep going the last 5 years? You kind of just been making some songs in Studio One, or did you ever move to any other like DAW or anything?
Yeah, so I learned Studio One and Pro Tools kind of around the same time. Pro Tools first, because it was on the studio in my high school's computer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
the computer in my high school studio. And then I moved to Studio One because it just had more options for creation. I still use Studio One for like audio editing and like when I go in and I do my final edits before I send it to an engineer. But for right now, like in terms of beat creation and just idea creation, I use Machine. And that one, not a lot of people use, but the people who use it, it's like they know it's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of have this philosophy that anything I need to learn or anything I need to do is just kind of like the next step in the process. And so like when I started out producing, like I'm talking the bottom, not the bottom of the barrel, but just like the most simple thing you could do as a producer is sample records and make beats off of that. And that's what I did starting out for like maybe 2 years. And I had friends that were rappers, but they weren't really like about it to a certain extent. And so I kept running into this issue of I would make the record. I knew that I needed some other piece to it, and then it would just sit on my hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of created its own cycle of like, what am I doing here? You know, I create the music, but, you know, it's not going to be released. How am I going to get it released? So that kind of led naturally into the, okay, well, if he's not going to be my rapper or he's not going to be my artist, then I'm going to be the artist, because I know for a fact from all my years of improv and like trumpet that I can create a melody. So really all I need is words, you know? So I took it upon myself, okay, how can I create this and live out this piece of art in the way that I would like it to be? And that's where the idea to become an artist came from. And eventually, once the artist part came along, obviously I had to finish them. So I had to learn how to engineer, because at the time I couldn't afford an engineer. And so I ended up when I was in college, I ended up taking a bunch of classes and like one-on-ones with actual people who knew how to produce and knew how to mix, and that kind of created a foundational set of skills, I guess you could say, that I use today in my producing and creation and mixing and so forth.
Yeah. That's super awesome, because it just goes to show that, you know, just putting that work in, like, it doesn't really matter the amount of time you're doing it either. It's like, if you just stay consistent, stay on it, you can get like so much further if you just take the initiative and just start trying things out. And I think for you, that's kind of been the case. I like what you said about, especially like producing, because the whole, even when I started too, it was like the whole stigma with producing is like, you got to make these instrumentals, and then you basically have to try and like sell them to people or get people to be on them, and that's really the only option. Like, you're basically taught like that's the only option, but then the more you dive into it, and nowadays, especially with like being able to publish yourself, being able to distribute all your music and do these things that people didn't have luxuries to do that back in the day. It's like now we have so many more outlets to release our own stuff, and there's so many options. You can release beat tapes, you can do collab projects, you can do compilations, singles, you can do this stuff all yourself. And if you know how to make music and just like get the ideas going, like the possibilities are endless. So I like that, because I think the worst thing you can do, especially from like a producer standpoint, is wait for people to give you these opportunities and wait for the right moment. It's like, you got to go make these moments, you got to go make these opportunities when you can, because like you said, you're going to have a hard drive of just songs that aren't getting used, and they're just going to forever be there, and you're just going to be stacking up songs that never see the light of day. So it's like, you kind of got to do what you did, and it's like, you got to kind of figure out how are you going to get these ideas out there to people, and really like put yourself first before anybody else, because, you know, it used to be the producer had to play the background and kind of just, you know, not really get the credit as much and just help the artist. And it's like, we can be our own artists now, you know what I mean? Even if you decided you weren't even gonna do vocals or anything, you could still be an artist as a producer. It's like, there's so many different ways to do it. But I just love that you took that initiative to kind of figure things out on your own as well, because I think a lot of people don't have that, artists included, because I think artists kind of just sit around and wait for things to happen, and it's like you lose a lot of momentum that way. At least in my opinion, I think that people can be getting so much further and learning a lot more in a short amount of time if they did that. But yeah.
So. I think you know, I'm guilty of both. You know, where it's like there have been times where nothing I did was anything other than, like, in my free time, I didn't do anything but sit in my room, look at my computer screen, and adjust my Melodyne or like my different audio levels, and I spent hours doing that. And, you know, like, that was probably my Friday, Saturday nights in college for at least 2 years. And I gained a lot of skills because of that. But also at a certain point, like, if you are becoming this person who's an artist, producer, et cetera, you have to decide and design what it is your art looks like and what it is you're going to do. So I do think that artists do kind of like wait around for things, like you were saying, because now I'm more of the artist, or I'm waiting for the engineer to do this, but I'm waiting for this person to do that. But at the same time, it it's also backed up by the fact that I know what they're doing. So it's me allowing them the space to do what is they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start wasting that time and they start falling over their feet, I know, because I know how long it takes to do something. Nobody can be like, oh, I need to master the song. It's going to take me 3 days. I know for a fact that any good mastering engineer takes 15 to 20 minutes to do their job. And so I may not do it like that, but I know down the road and things like that. So I think I always took it as a learning opportunity, because I may not be an engineer one day, but I will be working with them.
Mm-hmm.
I may not be a DJ one day, but I will be working with them. And so that's really what informs my decisions like that. Like, also like what you said, the need, like not having enough people and not having the resources, but also wanting to be the best at your craft. I think that's what really I'm looking at, because yes, I don't make as many beats as you could say like a beat maker would do in a day. But when I make something, I make it to the fullest of my ability, and also I try to hit certain markers or certain things in my mind that make it a quality production.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm shooting for the Olympics of sound. I'm not shooting for the high school state championship.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my energy into music maybe in a different way, but I'm always looking at producers, and I'm always looking at DJs, and I'm always looking at engineers. Like, how do you do that? I need to do what you're doing. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. And I like that too, because you also give yourself a different perspective into their world too, by knowing how to do these different things as well. And like you said, even if you're not like fully gonna do that one day and just do that and nothing else, it's like at least kind of the process that goes into everything and the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I definitely like that, and it definitely takes time to carve out like how it evolves over time, because like even from my perspective, I think I look back at like 6 years ago and I'm like, I don't make music the way I did back then. Like, I didn't know as much, you know what I mean? So it's like now things kind of got a little easier, but you still continue to learn and you still continue to pick up new things, and your whole process changes over time too. So it's like you don't know where it's going to go, but just being consistent and just continuing to put the work in is like the biggest thing. And I definitely commend you for that, because I think for you that's been like a big step in where you're headed as well. So congrats on that, man.
Thank you. Yeah. The next step is really just tying everything together as an entrepreneur and also a musician. So, like, making everything work so that all I'm doing is music.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being kind of like, I need to be some managerial over here, I need to do some marketing over here, is really just to provide things for my audience. Like, my kind of approach to marketing is like, if I don't have anything, I'm not going to tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really just want to enrich your life. I don't want to be like, what's on my plate or what's on my playlist, or, I don't want to do that, because, your time is more valuable than mine in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything I try to do, I try to cut through the noise of life. I try to do what's impactful, and hopefully that will be the difference in people wanting to follow my music, follow my story, follow my life.
Yeah. That leads me into a question. I've asked this on a few episodes, but it kind of leads into this perfectly, and that is, how do you think you're balancing, music with everyday life? Because obviously we make music, right? But we also have all these other things that everybody else has to do as well. So it's like life doesn't just shut off for the music. So like, how for you is that going, at least currently? Like, let's just say like this month or this whole year, like how has that been, kind of trying to balance the two different things and have them both work well, you know what I mean? Because it's tough when you're trying to do too much in the music. You start losing like relationships, you start losing different parts of your life that are also important as well. So like, how are you balancing that currently, you think?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that recently, my godmother, who's amazing, I sat down when I was over at her place, and she explained to me how like different people need certain things in their life in order to be who they are. And like, what I found out, which I always kind of wondered about, is that I'm more extroverted than introverted. So when it came to how I was structuring my day, or I never put any time into talking to other people. I never put any time into just randomly going somewhere where there's like a crowd or a group or just people to interact with. And I think that's a big reason why part of my life had suffered for so long. Now we had the pandemic, which kind of took the wind out of that part of my life, but I didn't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's only now recently that I noticed that in order to be creative, I have to have certain experiences around me and certain things around me. Of course, I can do it without it, but you know, what's the point? So right now, what I've kind of done is that, you know, I have releases that I want to do, and I kind of line them up throughout the year. And each release has different creative and non-creative parts to it. So I might need to fix these instruments over here, or I might need to send it to a mixing engineer. And so in my mind, I go through it. I go, I'm going to be creative at this point, and then at this point, I'm not going to be creative. I'm just going to put it out, and that helps a little bit. But in terms of the whole like sitting down, vibing, like at the beginning of like when you're a producer, like 90% of what you did probably was just like sitting like replaying it, you know, just like playing the beats, you know, just like loving it, you know. And I think that's something that I want to get back to more. Is that I want to clear out all of the BS and just kind of have that kind of childish feeling that I had back then. So yeah, that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think I like what you said there, because the more that you do it, it's like we talked about earlier with consistency. But then when the consistency starts to become like the everyday routine, you kind of do lose some of that like original feeling of it. Because like at the beginning, like you said, you might not even know what you're doing. You're just pressing buttons. You're just trying to figure it out. You might have like an 8-bar loop, and you're just like, this is kind of cool. Let me add some like hi-hats, or let me add like this bass line or whatever. And then once you do it over and over and over again, it's like it's more strategic almost. So sometimes you do lose like the fun of it, you know what I mean? But I think yeah, it's like if you find yourself losing that, it's like, why are you even doing it at that point? You don't want to get to the point where it's just so like strategic and just you do the same things over and over.
Exactly.
It's like,
right. Which is why I'm like, not to call out anyone in the music industry whatsoever, but it's like I'm always confused as to like hearing stories of like people create like 11, 20 beats in a day, or like, you know, 50 songs in a day, or 100 songs in a day, and it's like that's very impressive. And like I look up to someone like Prince as kind of like an inspiration. You know, he made a song a day. He spent the morning, you know, making the instrumental, then the afternoon writing the song, and then at night he would record it, you know. And it's like, that's awesome, but is everybody really like that?
Yeah.
And when I look at myself and I say to myself often, I'm like, you know, you could be making music all day long, but if everything is just a routine, you're ignoring the things that are not routine, like sitting down to prep a song for a mix or sitting down to release a song. Those things take your whole day. And so you can't be this robotic person that every single day I make 5 beats. It's like, that's so, what's the word? Unrealistic. You know, you have to manage your time and keep pushing it along. And so like with my music, my whole idea is that this is an honest interpretation of my sound. I'm not giving you more, I'm not giving you less, I'm giving you me. And so there's no kind of, although it might be pop music, although it might be R&B music, it's not manufactured. It's just made. It's just music, you know. And through that, I want to create a world in which other people can enjoy it. So whether that means like music videos, you know, cinematic media content, like that's my ultimate goal. That I'm not going to be able to do that if I do 5 beats a day for the rest of my life. I'm just not, you know. So there's different types of producers and there's different types of artists, and I think the goal is that people need to figure out what, not people, but you know, individuals are best when they figure out their place in society or their place in a community. And for me, I see my creativity as my edge. I don't see my repetitive rote practicum this, that, and the third as my edge.
Mm-hmm.
So I just work on that. I'm the only person who will be willing to do these three things. So I'm gonna do these three things. Like,
Yeah.
I know so many people who are amazing at music, but when it comes to putting the pen to the paper or doing the nitty gritty things, I don't like. I'm not speaking for them, but it's just I don't always see people in my lane. So I just
Mm-hmm.
focus on what I'm doing and I just keep going.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference for me, at least in my mind.
Mm. Yeah, and that's really all you can do at the end of the day is kind of just focus on your own journey and your own like purpose. And I think that that makes total sense to me as well because it's just like that comes into having that internal conversation, really just with yourself as a person, because like that goes even deeper than music. Sometimes it's like, what do you want out of life? Like I think a lot of people when they get into music, they don't even know why they're doing it. It's like if you don't have like a purpose, then why are you doing it? You can go do anything you want to do. Like there's so many
Yeah.
different there's so many different things you could do with your time. It's like if you don't
Yeah.
have a reason for doing music specifically, it's like I don't see the need to even bother at that point. If you're not waking up every day and enjoying what you're doing and putting your all into it and just really like having a good time at it, and I think like well, I keep talking about producers just because me and you we both produce a little bit. So it's like producer culture is a thing where it's like you said, you got to do 5 beats a day. You got to be on your stuff. You got to be doing
Right.
this, and this. It's like that is somewhat toxic because that does not apply to every single individual. And everybody
Yeah.
has their own limitations and their own way they want to live life as well. Like you can't just say this is how it's done, and if you don't do it this way, you're never going to succeed. It's like that's totally could not be more from the truth. You know what I mean? So it's like you really
Yeah.
just gotta. And again, that with the whole that takes time thing, you really gotta see what works for you and just go for it. You know what I mean? And there's so many different ways to make it work nowadays. It's like you shouldn't be afraid to go your own route.
Right.
So
Right. And creativity takes time, but
yeah.
also, you know, like, I often wonder if we as artists are existing in two different kind of universes. You know what I'm saying? Like hip hop is such a powerful force that it dominates everything in its path. But, before hip hop was such a powerful force, there was disco, there was jazz fusion, there was rock, there was pop, there was country, like all of these things kind of competed for time and for attention. And so once hip hop became kind of the dominant genre, you know, all that philosophy attached to it comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a student of hip hop. I love hip hop, but it's not really what I make. So if somebody's gonna ask me like, do I do 5 beats a day? Like, no, I'm not Madlib. No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not Timbaland. No, I'm not. These people. Um, but I keep that in mind as tomorrow. Can I do something more? No, I have this planned. Okay. I don't allow it to be like an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I'm different than these people, so I don't do what these people do. No, these people are doing it. They're successful. Like The Weeknd put out like 30 songs within like 1.5 years or something like that, and that's what made him really popular. Like, take note of that. Like, and create something from yourself that you think will be popular. Because as much as we can sit here and be like, that's not right for me, or that's not the way I want to do it. These people are successful, and you can't take that away from them
Mm-hmm.
either.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, no, good notes on all that. Like,
Yeah.
it is good to talk to even somebody who does like instrumental lo-fi, like hip hop and things like that. You also see that it is toxic, and you also see that it's like, there's a better way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. I don't think we've talked about that on this show though, so that was kind of a great thing to get into. So I appreciate your input on that as well. I do want to get into your latest single here in a bit. We'll talk about that. First of all, though, I did want to touch on the DJing thing because I know like I've seen on your Instagram you doing some mixes and stuff, and like talk to me about how that kind of got going, and like are you doing like local sets or things like that, or you're putting together mixes for like YouTube? Like how have you been doing that, and like how's that been going?
So I'll just say thank you. Thank you for recognizing the DJing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like at the beginning of the pandemic-ish, April, May, right before the kind of like the Black Lives Matter stuff started to pop off in the summer. And I think it really ended around that time, because it just became like a lot of things were going on, and it was just very heavy time.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of me becoming a DJ and continuing it, I loved DJing for a period of time. I found that over time. Oh, sorry. Let me back that up. You're asking something different. My bad. I'm trying to like organize everything in my head. So the DJing thing started from me wanting to create value for other people. I know that I'm good at this thing, DJing. I know that I have a catalog of songs that I really want to do for other people. How do I get this out there and maybe create some buzz over it? Yeah, so I actually learned how to DJ from kind of my friend and almost mentor. His name is DJ Von Allure. He's a ballroom DJ who's credited with the creation of the genre. So he was the creative director on Power. Have you know that show? And Empire,
Mm-hmm.
the Lee Daniels show. He's also the creative director for Pose on FX.
Nice.
So he's been in things that you've seen, is basically what I'm trying to say. But also he has like a huge catalog of ballroom tracks, and used to perform all over the place. But basically, he taught me how to DJ because I kind of got myself into a pickle. I signed myself up for a concert, and I said I'd be the DJ, and I didn't actually know how to DJ. So I had like 3 months to learn how to DJ, and when I ended up having the event, there were like 500 people there. So I went kind of like from zero to hero in like a couple months. So I really enjoyed DJing because of the kind of like the sound mixing options and how close it was to producing.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately that is what carried me along. Like I always felt that if I was good at DJing, kind of like if I was good at producing, or engineering, I would be good at producing. So it was kind of like this crossover. It was only beneficial for me to do one or the other, or both. When I got to the pandemic, I kind of wanted to do the same thing because I was eager to share with people my new skills, and so I took an hour of DJing and I kind of chopped it up into different parts, and put that up on Instagram. And like I said, it just went super crazy. Like I had over 1,000 likes. Like it was a lot of traffic for someone who just posts pictures of their dog. But over time, although I did like certain parts about DJing, I felt like it wasn't necessarily something that was going to improve my overall artistry. For some people it is, but for me, it made me kind of avoidant of new music.
Mm-hmm.
It made me avoidant of the whole listening process that happens with producers and artists, like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I heard a song, I was looking for that beat. I was looking for that fire that makes me want to put it in my set. And that fire that Vaughn taught me to look for is not necessarily the fire that I want for my music. And so there was this kind of like conflicting situation going on where I would spend 4 hours DJing, but I could spend no time producing. Or when I spent my time producing, it would sound like garbage because it would just sound like a DJ was making the music. Not to say that DJs can't make great music, but like, I mean, in a DJ, and like, I'm putting everything in like very strictly, like downbeat here, downbeat there, in kind of like this weird trance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I did well with those Instagram posts, but since it's not something that I really want to do, it's not something I'm going to force myself to do and share it with other people. Before Vaughn passed away, we talked about this. I told him I really didn't want to DJ anymore. And he had this kind of hope that I would eventually become a DJ. after that. But for me, it was a decision that I made. Like, what am I going to put my time into? I love performing, but I love performing for people, not other people's music.
Yeah.
So um, there was just not enough for me to really justify making it a full time thing.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what really helped me point in my direction to finishing this EP that's coming out. Now it started with What I Want, then came Love at All, my second single, and then Float, my most recent single, which just came out. But there's some more music left and some more updates to make before the final EP is out. And so I said, I can spend my time trying to do birthday parties over the summer, or I could try to spend time really finishing this EP.
Hmm.
So I went with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how that has like a story behind it too, and like a person behind it as well, because it sounds like he was kind of close to you as well, and like there was a whole chemistry there. So I think that's great, and like it's not like you didn't learn anything from it either. It's like you took those lessons and applied them to doing your thing as an artist as well now. So I think that's great, and I always give credit to like the producers that can like they can tour DJ and then they can go produce for like themselves and all these other people. I'm like, how do you even have time to do that? Like that's so much work at the end of the day. Like I don't know how people can do it, but credit to like those that can. But it's really just like we said, you got to do what is right for you and like whatever feels natural to you as well. And it's just I think that you don't want to do anything that like you said if you lose the love for it or you feel like that's not going to align with your journey moving forward, it's like you just got to do where you're at and everything. And I did want to get into, because you just mentioned the songs that you've dropped so far, so I want to get into Float specifically since it is the newest one. Kind of give me what was the story behind making that song, kind of from just creating the production into songwriting and all that good stuff. Like, what is the specific story behind that record?
So I have to say, the story behind that record has a lot to do with um, living here in Maryland and also being around somebody like Vaughn Allure. Um, when Vaughn taught me about music, he didn't just teach me about DJing. He taught me about production, and even like even if I was going to become an artist, he was like, "This is the way that you do it." And he's basically almost like executive produced, air quotes, this project because up until Float is the last song that we really worked on. He'd been kind of guiding me with information and just decisions that I could make. And ultimately, I was going to release this EP on his through his distribution network and through his name, and that ended up not happening as he passed away, unfortunately, before we got the chance to do that. But the song kind of has this journey throughout my life with him there and with him not there, and so it's very sentimental. I really didn't care how many people listened to this song. I just knew that I needed to release it for his sake and for my sake, and that would make me feel a whole lot better. But in terms of the actual meaning of the song, that's kind of completely different. The song is a lot about the love and what it means to have like a summer love, or to have affection for somebody and you just really can't say it. So if you can imagine yourself as a 14, 15, 16-year-old in high school and you really like this person over there and you just can't say it, but then finally it comes out of you and you just have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to say something. That's really where this song comes from, that place. And that heartbeat of the song is really what pushes everything along. I ended up working on this song for probably over 6 months, just because I redid it, rewrote it, came back, re-recorded it, remixed it, remastered it, this, that, and the third, and finally it got to the point where I was like, it's not getting any better right now. So I had to just send it out there. Anything specific about the song that that you liked after listening?
Besides your vocals, man, because like your vocals shine through on all three records. Because I actually had to go in and listen to it last week for the first time because I was like, I saw you had just released it like not too long ago, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I'm honestly probably gonna add it into. I have this playlist that I do like every week, where I do like little matchups with people. I gotta add it into there because I'm like, this is great. It's probably definitely my favorite of the three. I'm intrigued to see
Thank you, man.
like what, because like we can kind of talk about this as well. Is like, is the EP just gonna be probably what, like three or four more on top of these three then that are kind of gonna paint like a picture as well as like the full project? Like, what is that gonna kind of be like? What can we expect from the EP then?
Yeah, so the EP has one more song left. Um, every song is kind of like a piece in the puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
almost like different seasons, but really they all carry the same weight. Going back to my time with learning about music, it's like I was taught that in this way that you have to find what resonates with you, and so every single song in this EP resonates with me in a similar way. And so when I put it out for people to hear, I want people to hear the differences and the similarities and see that each song is a chapter in the book of the EP, which is the Jaguar Kid, which basically just talks about my upbringing and my life in early adulthood and things like that. There's some surprises. I think to really get down into it just touches on a lot of different areas: love, betrayal, need, and kind of this semi-uncomfortable feeling of, this kind of like semi-uncomfortable feeling that maybe you felt in Float or maybe you felt in some of the other songs. And I really feel like we as a society need more of that. We need more mediums or media that pushes the boundaries of what we're willing to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So with Love at All, it talks about somebody who is really hurt by love, and that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. But there's different layers to every song, and I encourage people to just listen back and just feel how they're resonating with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, again, I commend you for, making that type of music as well and just putting your heart into it, man, because that takes a lot of courage as well. And I'm looking forward to, listening to them all together when the EP drops and everything. And do you have any, like, obviously you don't have to reveal this if you don't want to. Is there a date? Do we have any type of, like, timetable? Can you reveal anything?
I can reveal that the lyric video for Float will be out very, very soon. Maybe this week or next week. The next song, maybe, I can't say when it will be out, but definitely before the end of the year, well before the end of the year, this EP will be finished. And that is kind of like the cap to the beginning of my career as an artist. And so I want people to just have it out there and hear it. And then from there, we're really going to be getting into the fun stuff. Like, this is really only part one to what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to be a kid forever, but that's just not going to happen. But if you can follow Jaguar Kid and you can really learn to love it, I think you'll really be excited about the work that I have ahead.
Yeah.
Because it really touches and capitalizes on everything that I'm talking about here. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will say though, like, going forward, just this whole experience has made me so much more happy as a person. I don't know if you feel the same way. It's one thing to have all your music on your hard drive. It's another thing to release it and have it out there for people to like. So, if anything, if I want people to take anything away from it, is that this brought me happiness and joy, and I hope it brings you happiness and joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, man. So early congrats on the release. I know it's not out yet, but early congrats on that, man, because that's a great thing. And to have your first project out there, that's going to be awesome. So
yeah, thank you, man.
So last few questions here. These are ones I ask on every episode. And the first one is, if you can go back 10 years ago maybe give yourself a piece of advice or maybe not change anything at all, what do you think you would do?
I give myself the advice that it's okay to reach out and grab onto things around you. I think that you can't go back and change time, and I think that I'm in the place that I need to be. But I got so much benefit from working with engineers specifically, um, that it's been a game changer once I started to let my work speak through other people. So I'd say to myself and to everyone, let your work speak through other people if you have the opportunity, and they will speak back. Um, and I that's really what I look for when I collaborate with people, when I work with people, when I hire people. Like, um, there's just nothing better than having something you created and having someone add on their special something to it. So yeah, this project was mixed by engineer Adam Kagan, and he's just a great engineer, and I love everything that he does. So I got to shout out him as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I don't get this a lot, and I wonder if you see this at all. That same type of kind of collaborative mindset. I wonder how many other producers are working in that same area, because we talked earlier about like hip hop and just kind of like how people are kind of fiending on their beats. And I'm wondering, have you met people that are really open and honest in this way, or is this a new thing for you? Because I'd like to find more producers like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, honestly, it kind of just like I do have a few people like producers that I work with as well. I think it's more of just like who do I vibe with on a human level as well. But like you said, a lot of people aren't open like that, so I think it kind of just depends on the person as well. And I actually talked to some kid that actually lives in not my hometown, but he lives like a town away from me. And he messaged me on LinkedIn and he wanted to meet and talk about music and he wanted some advice from me and whatnot. And he was kind of talking about a similar thing. He's like, I'm afraid to kind of give away too much of myself in music as well. He's like, I don't really want to like be the person that's always on social media or giving away like I don't know, my personality or whatever. And I'm just like, man, like you don't have to give away everything. Just like keep it rooted in yourself and be you, and you'll attract the right people. So I think it's just more about personality types and just who meshes with who at the end of the day. It has to be organic. That's my whole thing with collaboration is if it's not organic and you're trying to force things, you might as well not even do it. You know what I mean? But there's so many people out there
Right.
and there's so many great musicians and I think there's always an opportunity to meet new people and just learn about life through one another. And obviously, there's different levels of collaboration. But I think everyone that I've collaborated with, even artists too, it's like we have some type of connection outside of just music. You know what I mean? Like we see
Right.
things from the same perspective to an extent on life in general. So that's kind of how I've
Yeah.
always viewed it, I think.
Yeah. And I think, it makes it even like it also when you add the fact that like you're creating something that will live on forever,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like if you can get people together that understand that, and you know that your music and your art will live on after you, I feel like that changes the game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to make 5 beats a day. You just gotta take the time that's necessary to make something that you like. So that's really what I do, like with my whole process. I just create something and I let it go and I let it come back to me and let it come to fruition
Mm-hmm.
through those means. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great, man. And it just goes to show that everything comes full circle as well. Even if you can't
yeah,
see it at the moment, you'll see it eventually. So that's super
exactly.
awesome. So if we flip that, then obviously, it's hard to look into the future sometimes because there's so much unpredictability to life in general. But 10 years from now, where do you think you envision yourself in, music and life altogether?
Yeah, I think with the way that the technology is going, um, we're going to have the ability to kind of be wherever we want to be and do whatever we want to do in music. And so, just like I said earlier, I just like to be performing, recording at the highest level possible. Uh, if it's, Olympic level, then that's where I want to be. So in 10 years, I just want to be doing what I'm doing now, but at a higher level, more frequently, and just have the ability to impact people and take care of myself and take time for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the goal. I don't think metrics or any type of, number of albums is really important after that.
Yeah, and you got to keep, like we said, you got to keep that genuine love in there, because if that's gone, then what's the point of any of it? So
exactly, because you can extinguish your love.
Yeah,
you can definitely kill it.
100%.
But yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
So, do you have any final words of wisdom today for the listeners?
Yeah, definitely. One, I'm not wise, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. But I think that if you're being yourself in the art that you choose, there's not much that can go wrong. And that really the only thing that matters is what resonates with you. So if something resonates with you, let yourself, let other people resonate with it, and allow yourself to do what it is that you love.
Man, David,
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. And like I said, I appreciate your time today, man. That's all I have for you. But, man, I'm looking forward to that EP. I'm looking forward to everything you got coming after that. And keep up the good work, man, because like I said, I was impressed with what I heard already from you. And I just appreciate you for being yourself, being genuine. And, man, we're going to do this again soon. I'm sure of it. So thank you.
Thank you, man. And please, y'all, just, let's talk more, but stay updated. You can find me like on my Instagram, obviously, but I have to say, Anthony, like when we sat down, I didn't know what this conversation would be like, but I'm very happy that you invited me onto your show and just had the opportunity to have a conversation that was very person to person.
Thanks everyone for listening today. That was episode 123. We'll be back this time next week. As always, hit the support button on your podcast streaming platform if you'd like to send any funds. Feel free to leave us that 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode. So we'll see you then. Thanks everyone.